Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System. This automated train is provided...
The year is 2019. Societies have crumbled and been rebuilt. We're all sitting in our enclosures, still asking ourselves one burning question. When is Half-Life 3 coming out? The Half-Life series released back in 1998 with the first game and launched the eventual overlords of PC gaming into the public consciousness as the team at Valve redefined what shooters could be. The heavily modified Quake engine from id Software that the game was built with powered the first adventure that we all collectively took through the Black Mesa labs as Gordon Freeman, as we were allowed to witness the events unfold behind his eye. This was back during the height of id Software's popularity, meaning shooters were about guns, metal, and fragging your friends. Valve upended that tea table and showed everybody that a compelling story could come with a game that featured guns, and the game earned too many PC Game of the Year titles to count. We owe most modern shooters to this game, as pieces of its DNA can be traced all the way back to the landmark title that could. The idea of a set piece that advanced the story, for example, was pioneered in a shooter by Valve with Half-Life, meaning that we can thank this game in some part for the Uncharted series. It had a continuous world the player advanced through as opposed to levels, and instead of bosses that you had to shoot until they die, superior firepower would come to define entire chapters, such as the infamous helicopter. Puzzles would also creep in from time to time, as well as some late-game platforming, which is decidedly one of the parts of the game the fanbase knows has not aged well. The original idea of the game was a horror shooter, designed to scare players like Doom did way back in 1993 by what was then a tiny startup that nobody had ever heard of. The story of the development of the first game is a long, storied one that we honestly have no business discussing here, including a total rework of the game being decided on just barely ahead of an intended 1997 release. Half-Life would eventually explode onto the scene in November of 1998 after a hugely successful showing at E3 earlier that year, where it was promptly showered in accolades like Best Action Game from attending journalists. Console ports were announced that ended up both released and otherwise, with the PS2 having exclusive co-op content, and Valve would just rake in the cash like a certain cartoon duck. Gabe Newell was quoted as saying the team developed Half-Life with the budget of a game that hit around 180,000 lifetime sales. The game hit 212,173 units sold by the end of launch year, earning it $8.6 billion in revenue and the undying faith of PC gamers the world over. Last reported in 2008, the game earned itself 9.3 million sales at retail. With a hit so huge, how does a company follow up on that? Well, not easily it turns out, but after 6 long years of fans taking the series into their own hands with modding efforts sanctioned by the company, Half-Life 2 released on November 16, 2004. The game was inexorably tied to the launch of the Steam service, which itself could be a whole other episode, and a huge factor in the PC distribution platform gaining the relevance that it did. Following the events of the first game, with Freeman deciding to go into the employ of the enigmatic G-Man, he's placed into City-17 to attempt to rise against the Overseeing Combine, an alien race that took advantage of the transdimensional shenanigans of the first title to take control of the planet. Once again, Valve redefined the game through the technology they displayed, including advanced animation, narration, AI, and physics, which the team was all too happy to show off with the gravity gun. Does Half-Life 2 require any more of an introduction? This is the game that shooters still follow the template of, and is widely agreed upon to be one of the most significant games of all time due to the advances in technology the game itself made, as well as taming the Wild West that PC gaming was at the time with Steam. When we last heard at the beginning of 2011, the game sold a well-deserved 12 million plus copies. The episodes are where the story becomes interesting anyways, with Valve announcing Half-Life 2 Episode 1 with a trilogy of shorter games to continue the story being chosen so that the team could release content for the series more quickly. To their credit, though, the next month saw the release of Episode 1 to very positive critical reception, though length was a problem. The problems very much start here. Despite how the series was announced as shorter games, the feedback pushed the team to do better and push the series into new directions. Over a year later, Episode 2 would launch on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC as part of the Orange Box, and what we all bought the Orange Box for before we all discovered the meme-tastic Portal. What took so long was that the team wanted to keep pushing the envelope and put a focus on wide open environments and vehicle segments. To their credit, the second expansion was significantly longer and still highly praised, sitting even today with a 90 on Metacritic. And then, the last we saw of these characters in an official capacity has been the female protagonist Alex sobbing over her dead father. Talk about cliffhangers. Half-Life 2 Episode 3 continues to elude us over 11 years after that last entry, with very little having been said about it, and what little pieces there are being put together by fans, waiting ever so patiently for a game that will, likely, never come. Of particular note is a 2015 interview with Jeff Keighley himself, where Gabe Newell was quoted as saying that the management-free structure at Valve would demand a large number of staff beginning to work on a project like Half-Life 3 on their own free will, which isn't likely due to their experiences with Portal 2. There have been many theories over the years as to what's going on with the series, and if Valve still cares enough to develop the game with the thriving Steam platform being a full-time job in and of itself, that too, many would argue Valve is doing a pretty poor job handling already. When considering that next to the 11 years of expectations that the game will hold for any classic PC gamer, perhaps it's easy to empathize with a team that would be faced with that impossible task, just not taking the risk in the first place. While vaporware may come, like Duke, and vaporware may go, at least we'll always have the Borealis. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.